portions of this show have been pre-recorded.
Yeah. It's a podcast rebroadcast. All of it is pre-recorded.
You big dummy.
Stand by to receive our transmission.
I can't believe that. Hey, you might have heard silence. But we had Fonzie come in here. And smack the board because we weren't going out over the air. We had a little problem with the board here. The button was on, the light was on, and he knew that it wasn't on. So Alan came back in here and just kind of did the old Fonzie. You remember how Fonzie used to hit the jukebox in Happy Days? Fonzie hit the jukebox and it would actually fix, or the pinball machine or whatever he did. Alan did a little Arthur Fonzarelli thing on the board here. Now it's on. Hey, it's BK on the air here on AM 1450 and 100.3 FM WBHF. I did get to go see Moon Knight. I saw the season finale of Moon Knight, season 1. I guess they're going to have a season 2. They haven't announced it yet, but it was a great timing because Moon Knight ended just as Doctor Strange was starting up in the theater. So I watched the finale of Moon Knight, which I loved. I thought Moon Knight was a great show. It was bizarre. It was well written. It was well produced. It looked great. All their shows look like their theatrical shows. But Moon Knight was so bizarre and different from anything else that's came along that I thought it was fantastic, and it was a great ending to the show as well. That's actually the end. If they don't have a season 2, I guess that's fine, but it may have ended altogether. But just as Moon Knight ended on Wednesday, Thursday night, I got to go see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And I'll start this off and preface it by saying I'm a Sam Raimi fan. I'm a huge lover. If you've listened to the show, you know that I'm a big fan of movies, entertainment. I actually am a fan of directors. I am familiar with film directors, filmmakers, and I love studying it, wading into it. I've been into it ever since I was a kid, noticing directors' names even on TV series that I would watch as a kid. I started noticing, the same director name is popping up, and that led me into checking into credits and seeing what other work film producers and directors and writers, cameramen, cinematographers would do. And Sam Raimi was the director of the original 3 Spider-Man films that Sony did with Tobey Maguire. And he's an accomplished movie director himself. Started out with the Evil Dead series, horror films. I would say he's mostly known for a horror director, but not so much anymore because he's really broken out of that. But he's an entertaining, visionary director. There are some directors that will direct films, and some of us know them so well, know their style so well that we can start watching a film, and some of them I can go, I can tell who directs this. And Sam Raimi is kind of one of those. Stanley Kubrick was one. I mean, I could look at a Stanley Kubrick shot film without even being told it was directed by Stanley Kubrick and know that it was directed by Stanley Kubrick. Steven Spielberg to a certain extent, and certain other directors, the Coen brothers, a lot of them have a certain distinct style of placing the camera in a certain way, zooming in, doing things with special effects and montage shots. And Sam Raimi is no exception. His movies, I recognize his directorial style right off. Well, he's back, and he directs for the MCU, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I'll tell you a little bit about it, how it's doing in the box office, and what I thought about it, and my review and some thoughts when we come back after the Golden Rage of TV. It's BK on the air.
We'll return after these messages.
It's Big Track, the computer-activated tracker and the automatic transporter. Your child sends Big Track off on a mission by programming in up to 16 commands. Like fire 3 laser blasts. Big Track stores your child's commands to get out of a tricky spot. To complete the mission, Big Track rolls in, drops the payload, then heads for home base in another assignment. Big Track for your child from NB Electronics. Transporter sold separately.
How about a movie, lovely lady?
As far as dog, but with a flick of my bick, I can see you're a hick.
Coffee, tea, or a flick of my bick?
Flick of the bick, sir? Oh, a flick of the bick, sir? Why just light up when you can flick your bick? It's smooth, easy on the thumb, and you get thousands of flicks from a single bick. The Bic Butane.
Shh, stop flicking your bick.
Greetings, fellow classic TV fans. One of the most famous names in Hollywood is that of actress, director, and producer Jodie Foster. Over the years, she's received many awards, which include 2 Oscars, 2 Golden Globes, a Cecil B. DeMille Award, and more. In 1968, the young acting prodigy's first television appearance was with her older brother Buddy, who played Ken Berry's son on Mayberry RFD. Soon after, Foster guest starred on the Doris Day Show and began a recurring role as Joey on The Courtship of Eddie's Father. In the late 60s, she landed multiple roles on Gunsmoke, and then by the early 70s, her TV career simply took off. In 1970 alone, she had parts on shows like Daniel Boone, Adam 12, and Nanny and the Professor. In 1971, she appeared on My Three Sons and Bonanza, and in 72 and 73, both The Partridge Family and Kung Fu. That era also marked her inevitable transition onto the big screen. Director Martin Scorsese clearly saw Jodie's undeniable potential and cast her in not one but 2 of his major hits. They were Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore and, of course, Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro. All this alone would have seemed like a pretty accomplished career, but as we've all learned, the great Jodie Foster was just warming up. This is Pat McCormick with your retro TV trivia from the Golden Rage of TV. You can also find me on YouTube and Facebook at Golden Rage of TV and on Twitter at Golden Rage of TV1. And now back to BK on the air.
Thank you, Pat, for that trip into the Golden Rage of TV. Speaking of Pat and the Golden Rage of TV, that's right, you can see him on YouTube. He has a YouTube channel, Golden Rage of TV. Just search for him. You can find out where Pat McCormack is. I was happy that he was able to get a hold of Michael Gray from Shazam, a frequent guest on this show and a friend of mine, to be on the Golden Rage of TV, one of his live videos that he does on YouTube. He spoke with Mike a little bit. I'm going to bring you a little bit of that now. Pat McCormack and the Golden Rage of TV talking to Michael Gray from Shazam.
I love doing this nostalgic material because it was the best time. You know, it was a simpler time, obviously.
Yes.
And just kind of like for me, once I started doing this, I started attracting people that liked the same stuff. There was an incident in Las Vegas where was that where you got locked in the broom closet or?
Oh, that was at the Forum.
Oh, at the Forum.
The Osmonds concert. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. My manager, Chuck Lawford, said to me, "We're going to the Osmonds concert at the Forum. You want to go with?" I said, "Sure." So we walked in the Forum. So we walked down. I was in about the 3rd row center of my seat. On the way down, I got to about maybe the 8th row from my seat. And all of a sudden, people start yelling, "There's Michael Gray." Next thing I know, they started coming up to me, pulling at my hair, pulling at my clothes. The Osmonds were on stage. And security grabbed me and threw me into a broom closet for the whole show. I couldn't come out.
So Michael Gray talking to Pat McCormack and the Golden Rage of TV. Check it out. Michael Gray was a teen throb back in the day. I mean, there were I think it was a Tiger Beat or 16 magazine or something did a thing about him saying, "Win a date with Michael Gray," and that whole thing that they used to do back then. So kudos for Michael being able to go on with Pat McCormack. I know Pat McCormack was very happy and excited and over the moon to have him on the show there and talk to him and relive a lot of stories from Shazam and the TV movie that he did with Burt Reynolds, a lot of things that he did in career, even working at a flower shop for a while, opening up, and him and his wife having a floral shop for a long time. So Michael's done a lot. We'll have him back on our program sooner or later when we want to talk Shazam, and he knows he's welcome on it anytime. So check it out, Pat McCormack's Golden Rage of TV's YouTube channel with Michael Gray. I hinted earlier that I got to see Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. It's doing pretty well. I mean, a lot of people knew it would. It's no surprise that it is doing well from CBR.com. Doctor Strange preview night box office indicates a potential top 5 all-time weekend. Now, this article was from early yesterday, so we're already into the weekend, so there's no telling what's been added to this take from Doctor Strange. It boasts an impressive preview night at the box office. Preview night box office numbers for Doctor Strange indicate a promising start, as reported by Gatish Pedya. Founder and editor of Box Office Guru, Multiverse of Madness earned an impressive $36 million during its pre-show opening on May the 5th. Now, in comparison, Spider-Man No Way Home ranked a whopping $50 million during its Thursday preview, while Avengers Endgame pulled in $39 million during the same time period. Now, despite the weaker performance, Doctor Strange's The latest big screen adventure scored the MCU's 8th biggest preview gross. Industry analysts forecast that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness will have an increasingly strong weekend at the domestic box office. We'll see. We're already into the weekend. Helping in no small part by the film playing on 4,545 theaters across the United States. This is the widest location spread since the onset of COVID-19 and leading many pundits to speculate that the film could rake in anywhere between 160 to 180 million over the next couple of 3 days. So, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, no slouch at the box office. Some of that money that Doctor Strange made came out of my wife and I's pocket because we went to see it on Thursday night. And I'll say this. I was saying earlier before we went to a break that I'm a big Sam Raimi director fan. The Evil Dead films. Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. Dark Man with Liam Neeson, a great movie by Sam Raimi. Then he made the Spider-Man trilogy with Sony and Tobey Maguire, which were all fantastic. Even Spider-Man 3. Not a lot of people. Everybody thought Spider-Man 3 was and it is the least great one out of the three, but I still enjoyed Spider-Man 3 when I saw it. Sam Raimi also went into the Western realm with The Quick and the Dead with Leonardo DiCaprio, Sharon Stone, and Gene Hackman, which is again a great Western with Sam Raimi's stamp on it. It's a great Western film. It's a throwback to a lot of the old Westerns. He threw a lot of things in there. And actually, I think that was probably one of the earliest things that I saw Russell Crowe in was The Quick and the Dead, directed by Sam Raimi. And then after he was done with the Spider-Man films, he kind of returned. He went back into horror, I think, if I'm getting the timeline right here. He did a movie called The Gift with Kate Blanchett and Keanu Reeves and Hilary Swank. I think also J.K. Simmons played the sheriff in that movie. It was set like in Louisiana or somewhere, and Kate Blanchett played a lady who could tell the future or to tell when something bad was going to happen, or see someone see a dead person. Or see the future. Very well done movie. I thought it was great, called The Gift. And then he went all full crazy Sam Raimi horror again and got into directed a movie called Drag Me to Hell. And it was an over-the-top, very scary horror film, which I thought was very well done. Well, as we know, Scott Dickerson, the original director of Doctor Strange for Marvel, quit or left the production under creative differences or whatnot. I don't know the actual details behind that. But he left the production, and someone, I don't know if it was Kevin Feige or someone with Marvel, thought, hey, why don't we call Sam Raimi? He worked on Spider-Man for Sony. He understands the Marvel universe because he does. He watched the Spider-Man films, and he gets it. He's a director that understands all of them, even down to reproducing some of the comic book covers that Spider-Man had as actual scenes from the Spider-Man films. You know, there's one, Spider-Man 2, when Peter started to lose his power due to his self-doubt or whatever was making him lose his spider powers. There was a scene where he takes his costume and he throws it into a metal trash can in the alley, and he kind of walks away from the trash can with a thunderstorm and rain in the background. And the camera had the trash can in the right part of the screen, and he walked away on the left side of the screen off into the distance down the alley with the lightning in the background. Well, that's an exact replica of a Spider-Man cover back in the 70s. I can't remember what issue it is. People that know issue numbers much more than I do will know exactly which one it was. Maybe from the 60s, I don't know. But that scene from Sam Raimi in Spider-Man was an exact replica shot of that cover of that comic. So you can tell Sam Raimi's a Spider-Man fan and a comic book fan. So what a great choice it was to bring Sam Raimi back to direct this movie, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which was touted as being a Doctor Strange superhero horror film. Hey, who else could do a better job with that? It's a very short list. One of them is Sam Raimi, and he is back. And as I watched Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I could pick out so many Sam Raimi shots and so many homages to a lot of other films that he's done. I saw, that scene there looked just like something out of the Evil Dead, or that scene there looked like that could have been in another film he does with the tilted cameras and the zoom ins and the quick edits and that Sam Raimi signature stamp on it. Multiverse of Madness has just that. And there's two things. This is no surprise. I'll tell you this, too. Sam Raimi likes to put in his films, there's two things to watch out for in his films. There's a lot of things, but two in particular. Always look out somewhere for actor Bruce Campbell, because Bruce Campbell's his buddy. I think they were friends for years, and he was in his original Evil Dead films back when they were just struggling in the business. And you can always find Bruce Campbell in there somewhere. And I don't know what year model car it is, but Sam Raimi's parents had a yellow Delta 88. I think it's a Delta 88 Oldsmobile car. It was a big old giant, land yacht family car from the 70s. And he always likes to sneak that yellow Oldsmobile Delta 88 into his films as well. That's what Ash is driving in Evil Dead. That's what Uncle Ben is driving in his Spider-Man films with Tobey Maguire. He always sneaks that car in somewhere. So, yes, both those things, I'm not spoiling anything major here, but both those things, you can find both those things, Bruce Campbell and the yellow Delta 88 Oldsmobile car, Sam Raimi's parents' car. You can find it in Multiverse of Madness. If you just look, you'll find out where they are. Speaking of there, we're going to take a break. I might get more into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness when we come back.
We never miss a meal, cause we love our cereals. This is the big boss, we call him Boss Moss. Make sure you spell it right.
Snorkel's what they call me, so handsome and pretty.
He's little hand-hosed.
He's got a weird nose.
Do I really have to sing?
My name is Grumble.
I am Kamumble.
You're standing on my foot.
Gargold is his name.
Smugness is my game. I know more than you do.
Says you.
And don't forget me, I'm goody-goody. I always do what's right. For instance, I eat freaky cereal because it's got a lot of vitamins and it's good for me.
You too can have crunchy, freaky cereal as part of your good breakfast. And there's a free freaky in specially marked boxes.
Okay, here comes the big finish.
We are the Freakies. We are the Freakies. This is a Freaky Free.
You got what it takes. You put style in everything you do. Diet right. Diet right. You got what it takes. You got great taste going for you. Diet right. Diet right. Cola. You got no sugar. You're a delight. Delicious cola taste. Diet right. Yeah. You got what it takes. You got diet right. You got what it takes. You got diet right.
All right, Scott, we're a team, and there's nothing to worry about. We come here, and we're going to conquer, and we're going to take some.
When it comes to shows about movies and comic books, heroes and crazy news, I tune into PK on the air from 10 to noon Saturdays.
And you should tune in, too. Also, want to go off the air on Saturday and late, around noon or whatnot. I do turn it into a podcast, take out all the commercials and put in a lot of classic stuff from the old days and kind of jazz it up a little bit into the BK Escape Pod podcast. You can hear it. I got a YouTube channel, Spotify, Anchor, Podomatic, and at SoundCloud. So there's several places out there. Just search for BK on the Air podcast, and you will find it. We'll get back into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness a little later, but right now it's that wonderful, magical, confusing sometimes time we like to call the Flash the Audience of the news, the weird, the strange, and the bizarre. And I've got all the news flashes today. All from UPI. The World Video Game Hall of Fame in New York announced the induction of groundbreaking games Miss Pac-Man, Dance Dance Revolution, and Sid Meier's Civilization, plus some others, into the Video Game Hall of Fame. We talk about this every time that they induct some games into the Hall of Fame, and we got some Rock and Roll Hall of Fame news coming up later talking about Hall of Fame. The World Video Game Hall of Fame, part of the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, announced the 4 games that were selected from a field of nominees that also included Assassin's Creed, Candy Crush Saga, my wife will be happy about that, Minesweeper, my mom will be happy about that, NBA Jam, Parappa the Rapper, Resident Evil, Rogue, and Words with Friends are all inductees. Miss Pac-Man, the 1981 sequel to the arcade classic Pac-Man, sold 125,000 cabinets within 5 years of its release. I guess that was a big record back in the day, back in 1981, making it one of the 5 best-selling arcade games of all time, the museum said. I guess you probably have to throw Asteroids into that mix as well, as far as stand-up cabinet games go in the arcades. But Miss Pac-Man, I had no idea that that game was as popular as it was. I got the next news. A Texas family's 2-year-old Great Dane was dubbed the tallest dog in the world by Guinness World Records after being officially measured. Listen to this. Now this is how tall he is, not how long. 3 feet 5.18 inches tall. That's tall for a dog. Guinness announced Zeus, of course his name is Zeus, a dog belonging to Brittany Davis of Bedford, is now the holder of the record for the tallest living male dog. Davis said she received Zeus as a gift from her brother when the canine was only 8 months old. I wonder how tall he was then. She also said relatives suggested Zeus could be the world's tallest dog during a recent family gathering. So I guess they found out that he was the tallest dog ever. Also a Great Dane, believe it or not, named Zeus. This one was named Zeus, too. Stood at 3 feet and 8 inches tall. He died in 2014. So this Great Dane, named Zeus, coincidentally, has taken over the moniker of the tallest dog in the world, according to Guinness. I got the next news. Another dog story from UPI. A dog stolen from a Massachusetts family was reunited with its owner 11 years later when an animal control officer found him running loose. The Staunton Police Department said in a Facebook post that Animal Control Officer Michelle Carlos was called out on a report of a Yorkshire Terrier running loose and arrived to find the dog appeared to have not been taken care of, they say. The Yorkie was scanned for a microchip, and he was identified as Rex, a canine belonging to someone out of Boston. The owner said that she had bought Rex as a puppy for her family after her brother's death. They rushed to the Staunton Police Department and was reunited with Rex for the first time in 11 years. The department said the reunion should serve as a reminder to pet owners about the importance of microchipping. So yeah, and now most places will if you get a animal or a dog or a cat from the pound animal shelter, a lot of them, along with maybe whatever fees you might have to pay to legally adopt the dog or whatever, they microchip as part of that. Some of them do it for free. So if you can microchip your dog, at least. I got the next news. Oh, goodness. An intoxicated Maine man, it's not a Maine man, but Maine, M-A-I-N-E, state of Maine, was arrested for trespassing early Monday after trying to hide from police under a blanket, authority says. And he would have gotten away with it, too, if it weren't for those pesky kids. No, not Scooby-Doo. Maine's Belfast Police Department. Officers responded around 9:30 p.m. last Sunday to the Admiral Ocean Inn in Belfast for a report of a disturbance caused by a drunken man identified as Philip Delude, the Belfast Police Department said. They removed Delude from the property and told him not to return or else he'd be arrested. When police performed a sweep of the parking lot around 12:40 a.m., police said they found someone hiding in a chair with a blanket draped over themselves. Is that a guy over there covered with a blanket? Police pulled the blanket off to reveal Delude hiding underneath it, according to authorities. Facebook users poked fun at Delude's poor hiding place. Again, wait, is this an episode of Scooby-Doo, one user wrote? I got the next news. From Fox 10 News in Louisville, Kentucky. Kentucky Fried Chicken hopes to make Mother's Day finger-licking good with a bouquet full of fried chicken and fresh roses together. There's nothing like the smell of fresh roses and fried chicken mixed together. Now, it is Mother's Day weekend, and I'm going to go see my wonderful mom either today or tomorrow. I haven't figured it out yet. But happy Mother's Day weekend to everyone. But here's an idea that you could take advantage of. The chain, Kentucky Fried Chicken, it's Kentucky Fried Bouquet. Not bouquet, but bucket, as in bucket. A DIY arrangement that's part fried chicken and part fresh flowers as part of a special 2022 promotion. The kit comes from Pro Flowers and includes 12 colorful and vibrant roses, a glass vase or vase, a KFC decorate vase on the side of the vase to decorate it. 8 skewers and a card to tell Mom just how much you love her, KFC said in a statement. The skewers are for KFC's fried chicken, which needs to be purchased separately and is not included in the kit, the company added. In order to snag a Kentucky Fried Bouquet kit, it's so hard to say, customers must also pre-order a KFC Side Lovers Meal for Mother's Day, which includes 8 extra crispy tenders or 8 pieces of KFC fried chicken, 4 baked biscuits, and a choice of 3 large sides. The KFC Sides Lover Meal must be ordered through the KFC mobile app or online between May the 1st and May the 3rd, which is, I guess, already passed. So, anyway, they were doing this. Mike Chavez, KFC's chief marketing officer, said in a statement, while a regular bouquet of flowers is good for Mom, think about this next year. This one will make Mother's Day. It'll take it from a 10 to 11. Okay, that's according to him. Now, my mom would enjoy it. I don't know about yours, but when you think KFC's been getting into a lot of stuff other than just their chicken. I knew that we had a story not too long ago in our news flashes that we were talking about KFC Crocs, you know, the shoes that you wear. And these shoes, the Crocs smell like Kentucky Fried Chicken. So I don't know if that appeals to I don't know who that would appeal to. It doesn't appeal to me because you're like, oh, yeah, your feet smell like KFC chicken and your feet mixed together. So that wouldn't be very nice. Or the KFC candle. Remember that? We had a candle story about KFC making a candle with the KFC aroma. I'm weird when it comes to smells like that with candles. I don't mind having like a lavender-smelling candle, apple, cinnamon, pumpkin spice like for fall and Halloween and Thanksgiving. But when it's certain types of food, I don't know if I want the aroma of KFC floating either from my feet or in the house unless I've bought some and brought it home, and that's why it smells like KFC. That's a little different. When I go get us food, sometimes we don't feel like going to eat, and I'll go to the drive-thru somewhere and get, my lovely wife and I some food. My car will smell like the food that I just bought. Right then it's nice, but when it smells like that food 2 days later, it's not so nice because it kind of mixes with everything else. So it's BK on the Air. We'll have more nostalgic geekiness when we come back.
We will return after these messages.
Dial, do your stuff.
You get that clean, fresh, confident feeling all day long with Dial. Aren't you glad? That clean, fresh, confident feeling all day long with Dial. Aren't you glad?
You'll be glad Dial's active deodorant ingredient keeps working all day long.
That clean, fresh, confident feeling all day long with Dial.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by Ed's Almost Good Beer. Remember, Ed's Almost Good Beer was brewed in God's country when God wasn't looking.
It's okay if you don't understand what he's talking about. He probably doesn't either. It's BK on the Air on AM 1450, FM 100.3, and online using the Tunein radio app.
That's right. I'm back. It's BK on the Air here, dispensing nostalgic talk radio and geekiness every Saturday here at WBHF. And you can call in if you want and add to the program. 770-386-1450 is our number if you do wish to call in, and somebody's calling in right now. Hello, it's BK on the Air. Who's this?
Hello, Barry.
Oh, hello, Eric. How you doing?
I'm okay.
I'm just swinging on the top of the world right now that you called in today.
Hey, you know why?
I think I do know why you're calling in today. I think that you saw a certain movie over the past week, didn't you?
Is he there?
Alan is not here right now. He will be returning shortly. But here's the thing. Maybe it was the best time for you to call in to tell me what you're going to tell me when he's not here.
Because now he won't help for me.
Well, he will, because he's probably listening right now, and he'll have something to say when he comes back. And if he doesn't, I'll tell him what you said. So.
See? Okay.
Yeah, see, that's how it is. Yeah.
I was apprehensive about this movie.
You were about this certain movie. And we're not talking about Doctor Strange, by the way. We're talking about another superhero.
Batman.
The Batman.
Or,
that's right.
The Batman.
The Batman. Got to put a V at the end, beginning of it.
It was a good movie.
Yeah, let's start off by saying, though, at first, tell everybody what you thought about it when you heard the casting and all that. Let's go in order here. When you first heard about it, how they had casted Batman, what were your thoughts, Eric?
My thoughts?
Yeah.
I can't say that because of the FCC.
Well, that's true, but clean it up for me.
No, and no.
Yeah, you thought it would be terrible with Robert Pattinson cast that Twilight guy as Batman and Bruce Wayne, right? Yeah.
And in a way I was right, but in a way I was wrong.
Well, that's true. And I'll say that I had my worries as well. When I heard that they cast him, I'm like, really? They cast that guy as Batman in this film? But I think that you and I and a lot of the people were pleasantly surprised over the movie, weren't we?
He was an okay Batman.
Yeah, it was actually, I thought it was good. It wasn't the best Batman movie ever made, but I was pleasantly surprised.
My issue was his Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, his Bruce Wayne was a little punk star, emo-looking, whatever.
He's a Bruce Wayne for the time.
Right, but let's be honest. Bruce Wayne is a depressed individual, lost his parents. He puts on a suit to fight crime. Bruce Wayne's got his own mental issues himself.
But man, this was just over the top.
Yeah, but that did not ruin the movie, though. It did not ruin it.
No.
Well, it takes a big man to call in and say that they were wrong, which I guess is what you're saying.
I didn't say it was wrong.
Well, I said it.
Yes, you did.
You were kind of wrong.
I'll get you for it next week.
You got to eat a little crow because of it, because you wind up being better than you thought. And I think that's great that you called in to tell us that.
Yeah. Well,
music was good.
Alan didn't hear me, so I'm good.
Well, he'll know. I'll make sure that he finds out.
You would.
Yeah. And if he's listening, I mean, you're on the radio. He may be listening right now where he is.
Yeah.
Let me write this down. What's today? May the 7th. Eric admits that he likes Batman with Robert Pattinson. I'm writing it down just so we remember.
Yeah.
For future reference. All right, well, good. Well, thanks for calling and admitting it, because we know that you had problems with it, so that's okay. It's okay to admit that we were, we had problems, but it's okay after all. It's all right.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, now you got to see Dr. Strange. Listen, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, all right?
All right.
Bye. Talk to you later. Bye. So, yeah, Eric, I had some trepidation when I heard that Robert Pattinson was cast as Bruce Wayne. We all did on the program. If you listened to the program regularly or just a few weeks ago, we did talk about how much we liked it and how much we were worried about it when we heard about it. But I'm going to switch gears back to Marvel now and Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange, I always suspected this day would come. Because you always suspected this day would come. I'm ready.
On May 6th, nothing can prepare you for the mind-bending descent into madness.
This is the only way.
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Rated PG-13. See it in premium large formats and IMAX.
Yeah, now I was talking earlier about Doctor Strange, and I did see it. And the whole movie's basically a kind of a spoiler, because there's so many things that happen in this film. They first delved into the multiverse in the first Doctor Strange movie. It was talked about and discussed by Doctor Strange in the Ancient One, played by Tilda Swinton. And they've talked about it here and there, and it was really broadened. We found out a lot more about it in Spider-Man No Way Home, which came out this past December. And we all knew that this movie was coming because we saw a trailer for it. And the multiverse was going to become a bigger problem for us to deal with in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, it is. And let's just say that this is one of the darkest Marvel cinematic films that they've done since they started with Iron Man back in 2008. These movies have been going on since 2008. Now, granted, the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, which are kind of one movie together, they're in two parts, but they're one big story. It got kind of dark with those films, with things happening. But this film, things happen in this film because, we got a horror element to this. And they said beforehand this is going to be a superhero/horror film, which a lot of things happen. It is perfectly titled The Multiverse, in the Multiverse of Madness. And this whole movie's got a lot of madness to it because there's a lot of things happen in it. Let's just say that I don't yell out. I don't yell too much at a film sometimes. I mean, I'll clap and cheer when wonderful things happen. but I yelled expletives in my head where no one can hear them several times when I watched this film in the theater. I'm like, oh no, look at, what was that? What happened? Look at, what was this? It's over the top. It's Sam Raimi, and it's really great. 2 big thumbs up from me on this film. Perfect follow-up to Spider-Man No Way Home with the multiverse. He puts, Benedict Cumberbatch is now, they're considering him the anchor hero of Marvel. You know, Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. kind of was before, but now Benedict Cumberbatch with Doctor Strange has taken over that mantle of the elder main hero that keeps it all together or makes it all fall apart, depending on what way you look at it. So basically in this film, without spoiling it, Doctor Strange has done some things. He's done some strange things by opening the multiverse, by messing with happenings and reality and things like that. And let's just say that there's an entity out there in the multiverse that kind of keeps watch over that and does things and keeps an eye on it and prosecutes and arrests people and takes care of people that mess with things that they shouldn't. 770-386-1450 is our number. Someone else is checking in with us right now. Hey, it's BK on the air. Who's this?
Chance in Atlanta.
Chance in Atlanta. Hey, Chance. How you doing?
Good. You were talking earlier about the Spider-Man issue that Sam Raimi had paid homage to. That was issue 50.
Issue
and it
50.
actually does not show the trash can.
Okay, yeah, but where's the part where they shows Peter walking away with the trash can? Is that one of the panels inside the book?
That's correct, and that was actually the first appearance of Kingpin in that issue. It's a very valuable comic.
I
book.
knew somebody would know the number because I don't know the numbers. I just know the images when I see them. And I think it was John Romita, I guess, that did the art to that. I'm thinking.
He did.
Awesome. All right, thanks, Chance. Bye.
All right.
So, yeah, somebody else that liked it. So, and I know that for a fact that James Install from Geek to Me Radio, our partner up in our broadcast partner, who we actually hooked up with on Halloween, our past Halloween show, and did like a simulcast on 2 different stations at the same time with KTRS up there, AM 550. We did like a simulcast with James Install. That was a first, and I think it won't be a last. He loved it. He's got his spoiler-free review of Doctor Strange up, and it's getting back to it. There's a panel in Marvel that oversees a lot of this thing called the Illuminati. It's not the Illuminati that you think of when you think of Illuminati in our pop culture or whatever, but this panel keeps an eye on things that's going on in existence over everything, and it's no surprise. And you've seen him in the trailer. I'm not spoiling anything here either. Patrick Stewart as Professor X from the X-Men. And he also plays Captain Picard. You know Patrick Stewart. He's been around for a long time. He portrays Professor X in this film in his wheelchair from the X-Men. And he's part of the Illuminati panel that keeps watch over all these things, that arrests Doctor Strange, puts him in these electronic handcuffs where he can't do his hand gestures and do magic and throw spells. So that's part of the story, too. So the horror element comes in where we deal with like a zombie issues and death and stuff in this. And like I say, this movie, it may be a little too intense for some of your kids. Maybe you ought to watch this film first and check it out, because now, well, I know some kids play video games that are even more horrific than this movie is. At least that doesn't mean it's right, and parents should do that. But this one is pretty rough to watch. It was rough for me because, you know, you see a lot of your beloved characters, things happen, and you're like, wow, I can't believe that happened. So, and Michael Giacchino is not doing the music for this. He scored the music for Doctor Strange. He's done a lot of Marvel films, but one of the sometimes directors like to use their own music guy for a lot of their movies, the same music composers. Well, Sam Raimi really likes to use Danny Elfman for a lot of his films, and he has utilized the talents of Danny Elfman, film composer, ex-member of the rock group Oingo Boingo, and a musical genius in himself. You know, he did the music for the first Batman film. Tim Burton likes to use him a lot too, a director. But Danny Elfman does the music for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and it's a great score. It does utilize the Michael Giacchino score from the first Doctor Strange film, so they keep that continuity in there. So 2 big thumbs up from me and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. If you haven't seen it, you're a Marvel fan, you've probably already seen it already. But if you just want to go see a great film that's a great addition to this chain of films from the MCU, please do so. It's BK on the air. I got a great article coming up. We know 1982 was 40 years ago. I got an article coming up from AV Club about how the summer of 82 changed movies forever.
It begins in this world, on this side of the video screen, and plunges into a micro-universe that lives and breathes beyond the boundaries of imagination. The world of Tron. His video game designs have been stolen.
No, actually, I'm trying to get some solid evidence together.
The Master Control program has the proof.
We're still looking for that old file.
I put it in my memory. And there's only one place it could be hidden.
Come on, big fella, let's see what you got.
I'm gonna have to put you on the game grid. Inside the computer itself. Trapped.
Okay.
On the other side of the screen, a computer genius is forced to play his own video games with more than a high score at stake.
I want him in the games until he dies playing.
On the other side of the screen, it all looks so easy.
And even this ace of the arcade isn't ready to challenge them from the inside. Tron, an astonishing adventure odyssey that allows the eye to behold what only the imagination can reveal. Tron, its world awaits on the other side of the screen.
Losing weight. It's become a national obsession. Over 40 million Americans went on a diet last year. The problem was they usually didn't stay on it. Well, now the makers of Contact introduce Diatac, a remarkable time-release capsule that helps you lose weight by helping you stick to your diet. One Diatac capsule helps you control your appetite all day, so you eat less. New Diatac from the makers of Contact. It gives your diet a fighting chance.
Stand by to receive our transmission.
Yes, chair properly propped up against the station door so nobody can get in here and throw me off the air. I have to do that every Saturday when I flip on the microphone switch. Hey, it's BK on the air here on AM 1450 and 100.3 FM WBHF right here in the middle of downtown Cartersville, Georgia, just northwest of Atlanta. We're considered a suburb of Atlanta in the southeast United States. It's going to be a beautiful day today and a beautiful weekend. Let's doodle on this day in history. And by the way, coming up on the program, I have a story by Jeremy Smith at the avclub.com called How the Summer of 1982 Changed Movies Forever. We may think that the summer blockbuster started with Jaws, and it did. In 1975, the summer blockbuster movie started with the release of the movie Jaws, and it's been that way kind of ever since. But 1982 was a pivotal time in movie history as well. And it's a great article. I don't want you to miss that. But let's do all this day in history as we look back at nostalgia and retro stuff here on the show that we always do. Today is May the 7th. On this day in history, 1824, Ludwig van Beethoven's Ninth Choral Symphony, often regarded as his greatest work, premiered in Vienna. The Fifth Symphony by Beethoven is my personal favorite, but the Ninth is a glorious, loud, bombastic, wonderful movie soundtrack sounding thing. I tend to lean more toward the classical music that sounds like it could be put to a film or something like that. And Beethoven, Wagner, and Tchaikovsky are certainly three of the ones that came in that romantic era of classical music that sound like that. Great piece of work. 1867, on this day in history, Swedish chemist Alfred Nobel patents. You want to know what he patented in England on this day in history? It was a blast, I'm telling you. Dynamite. He patented dynamite on this day in history in 1867. On this day in history, in 1946, on May the 7th, 1946, Tokyo Telecommunications Engineering is founded with around 20 employees. The Tokyo Telecommunications Engineering. You may better know them as the later name that they changed to, called Sony. They changed their name to Sony later, but they were founded by 20 employees, probably in a basement somewhere in Tokyo. On this day in history, 40 years ago, 1982, which we like to talk about 1982 being 40 years ago on the program this year. We're examining it a little bit at a time as we go along this year. And sometimes I'll throw in 1972 because it was 50 years ago. Man, I can't believe I started school 50 years ago, but I guess I did. On this day in history, 40 years ago, IBM releases PC-DOS version 1.1. I'll bet Alan will be happy to know that. PC-DOS version 1.1 from IBM from 1982, 40 years ago. Man, we've come a long way with computers and video games and stuff since the early 80s. But, we didn't have anything like that at all compared to from the early 70s up to the early 80s. Another 40 years ago thing today. You want to take a guess at who the highest paid celebrity was 40 years ago in 1982? Think back about 1982, movies, television, or whatever was going on in pop history, or pop culture at the time. Who do you think was the highest paid celebrity 40 years ago? I'll give you a moment to think. Who was it? Who do you think it was? I'll give you a hint. It's not Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford was the second highest paid celebrity, I think, at the time on this list. Believe it or not, the number one highest paid celebrity in 1982, 40 years ago, was Chevy Chase. That's right. Chevy Chase was the highest paid celebrity in 1982. He was probably at the height of his career at that point and had a few more years to go with what was going on with him. Movie premiere in 1999 on May the 7th. My favorite Mummy movie, probably of all time, The Mummy, with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, directed by Stephen Sommers. That was another one of those examples of a remake of a classic horror character that was near perfect. I thought The Mummy was great. It could have been an Indiana Jones film. I mean, it could have been easily Brendan Fraser playing Indiana Jones, or Harrison Ford could have played him, and they could have called it like Indiana Jones in the Tomb of the Mummy or something like that, or Indiana Jones versus Imhotep, because it was that good of a movie. I thought it was just as good, or it was better. Probably it was better than the Crystal Skull Indiana Jones movie that came out, the fourth Indy movie. In 2010, another movie premiere on May the 7th from the MCU. We've been talking about the MCU all morning with talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. We're talking about the Moon Knight ended on Disney Plus, and we're talking about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness being in theaters right now. In 2010, Iron Man 2 premiered on this day in history, May the 7th. I liked Iron Man 2. I liked all three of the Iron Man films, much like all three of the Spider-Man films. A lot of people did not like Iron Man 2. Some people didn't like Iron Man 3. I think more people didn't like Iron Man 2. But I liked Iron Man 2 with Mickey Rourke as Whiplash, the guy with the electronic whips. I thought it was very well done. I thought it was great. We got to see a lot of different things, especially Tony Stark's armor, his suitcase armor, when he was at the racetrack and he was attacked and he opened the suitcase and put the portable suitcase armor on. That was the first time we saw that, and we'd see his armor progress over many of the films all the way up until Endgame, where he had the nanobots that would just cover his, and he just pressed his chest activator and his nanobots would build his armor all around his body, and it seemed to be even more powerful than all of his other armor. So everything gets better with technology, usually. 2013, on this day in history, May the 7th, Ray Harryhausen, American movie special effects artist in Clash of the Titans, a lot of movies, Sinbad, Jason the Argonauts. The man was a special effects guru of the time. He died at 92. We lost him in 2013. Birthdays on this day, 1840. I mentioned him earlier. Today is Tchaikovsky's birthday, Russian composer of the late Romantic era. He died in 1893. Today is Gary Cooper's birthday. He was born in 1901, American actor, mostly in westerns, but he's well known for Sergeant York and High Noon. He died in 1961. And look, Alan's back. Thanks for doing the Fonzie thing on the board earlier. That was
You're
great.
welcome.
Talk about Gary Cooper's birthday today.
Gary
Pooper? It's the other guy in the B movies. Gary Cooper, talk about High Noon. We always joked how Outland with Sean Connery's a High Noon in space is really all it is. It's like the same story. I think the guys were watching High Noon one night and went, hey, we could do a space movie about that and set it on one of the Jupiter's moons and make it the same thing about a marshal with people coming to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it'd be great. And it worked. I thought Outland was fantastic. Today on this day in history is the birthday of Darren McGavin, American actor, Murphy Brown, Night Stalker, Christmas Story. I mean, that guy was in a lot of stuff, and I loved Darren McGavin. He was a great actor. He died in 2012. That's right. He died not too long ago. Today is National Train Day. I haven't had one go by the studio yet.
Broadcaster's curse.
But it's National Train Day, so it's totally okay.
It's okay today.
So when it goes by today, I'll just stop and turn the volume gain up a little bit, and we'll just listen to it go by. Blow its horn. Today is also National Roast Leg of Lamb Day.
That's not nothing
I wouldn't mind a roast leg of lamb. By the way, the list of national days today was as long as from here to the outside here.
It was so long, I couldn't go into them all.
I had to pick and choose.
Yeah.
Today is also Free Comic Book Day. So if you haven't visited your local comic book store, you're thinking about getting into comics, or you want to go back and get some older issues of comics,
the Bartow County Library has a sign out there they may be giving away until they run out of supplies. A free
that's
comic
awesome.
book.
I think they were doing that last year, too.
Yeah.
And we did a speech about Star Trek over there, 50 years of Star Trek not too long ago. Well, that's great. Go get a free comic book because they come up with a lot. There may even be a Doctor Strange one. I'm not sure. So Free Comic Book Day. Happy Free Comic Book Day. It's BK on the air.
Give it up! Podcast Magazine presents the Hot 50 Countdown.
Hi, it's Rob Actis, host of the podcast magazine Hot 50 Countdown. Join me as I count them down from 50 to number 1, the top 50 podcasts in the land as determined by you, the podcast fans. From true crime, society and culture, self-help, health and fitness, science, and every podcast category in between. The Hot 50 Countdown is here.
And don't forget to vote for BK on the Air as one of your favorite podcasts at podcastmagazine.com.
You are the player, and the arcade is the arena. You focus your mind and propel yourself into a universe where you're the master of your destiny for as long as you can keep the trip going. This is the arcade experience. We're ColecoVision. We bring the arcade experience home with games like Donkey Kong with multiple screens, arcade controls, and arcade graphics that let you have the arcade experience at home because your vision is our vision. ColecoVision.
To BK on the Air. This is Mrs. BK, and I'm not listening now because, well, I sleep in every Saturday morning, but I'll catch him later on the BK Escape Pod podcast. Now, back to that man of mine, BK on the Air. Mwah.
And, buddy, she ain't lying either. She ain't lying because Mrs. BK just had a bout with bacterial pneumonia last week, and she missed, she's a school teacher, she missed a lot of school, but she recovered nicely. She went back to school Friday and is feeling much better now, but was exhausted from Friday, so I'm sure that she went to bed about 10 o'clock last night, and I think she's probably still asleep right now, so she's catching up on a lot of shut-eye, and she was completely exhausted. She had to do a function last night and be somewhere to help host something at our church, and she's like, I hope I don't fall asleep at this thing, and she didn't. She's good that way. So she came home last night, and the word crash couldn't have been more appropriate to describe what she did last night. That plane came in, it crashed. I think I said, "Hey, how you doing? Everything was fine." But boom, and I think she was asleep halfway up the stairs. And just went through the motion of getting ready for bed, but she was already asleep.
Pneumonia takes it out of you. I've only had pneumonia twice in my life.
That's the same many times I've had it.
Both times, first time I didn't know what it was. Second time, I knew exactly what it was because I've been sick before, and of course it brings you down. You feel, pneumonia takes whatever energy you thought you had and says, let me show you what no energy is.
You thought you've been sick before. Hold this beer.
What's crazy is I didn't have a cough or anything, but it was the lung infection that was just draining every bit of energy I had to fight it. But you know what's great about it? Went over, since I don't normally go to the doctor for a lot of nonsense stuff.
Yeah.
Doc's like, well, we'll just give you an antibiotic. You'll be good in about 4 or 5 hours, and dang if it didn't kick in.
Wow, isn't that great?
Because I don't overdo the antibiotic thing.
Right.
So I want to make sure that when I need it, it works.
I caught it once in 1980, and then I caught a pneumonia again in 1986. I remember the years because I remember the pneumonia so well, what happened. That's the only time I'd been sick in my life where I thought two things about dying. Number one, I thought I was going to die, and number two, I thought maybe I should just die.
That would be okay.
I would wish it because it was the worst I've ever felt in my entire life. You start
saying to yourself, that death would be okay.
I've seen a lot. I've
experienced a lot. I will tell you 12. This. The craziest thing about pneumonia for me when I had it, I remember sleeping probably 23 straight hours. Woke up, and just to walk to the bathroom and back, it felt like I hadn't slept yet.
Oh, boy, yeah.
I was like, have I not? I slept for a day. And that's when I was like, I should probably go to the doctor. Yeah. This isn't normal.
She felt bad. She went to the doctor, had the antibiotics, and what's weird is she has a lower back problem, too, where sometimes she'll move and do something, and will throw her back out, meaning she's pretty much useless. Can't walk. It's too painful. She's had it looked at, and she needs some physical therapy or whatever. It's not her spine. It must be muscular or something like that. But when the pneumonia was onset pneumonia, she didn't know it, but she coughed once while bending over last week. And that, on top of being sick, threw her back out as well. So I'm like, oh, it's just a domino effect. Everything is just falling into place. It's terrible.
You had her at your mercy then at that point.
Well, yeah, I had her at my mercy, but I didn't want pneumonia. Pneumonia is very contagious. And again, we both had COVID back in during December. And to me, again, this is anecdotal evidence because COVID's different with different people, or I don't know which one I had. But when we both had COVID, we're like, that was a walk in the park. Yeah. So I think we spent one day out of back then it was 10 days you're supposed to quarantine. They just since changed it to, I think, 5 or something like that. They can't make up their minds. But I had maybe the sniffles for one day with COVID, and I didn't feel bad any other way at all. It was just over.
Well, you're allowed to go back out if you're going to protest or something.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine.
You can go out.
Yeah, that's completely okay. Well, you weren't here for the earlier part of the program today, but I do need to tell you, I don't know if you're listening, but Eric called in, our regular caller, Eric. Eric called in.
I missed Eric?
You missed Eric's eating crow about Robert Pattinson. You missed it. But you can listen to the BK the podcast. You can listen to the show because he'll be on the
So
the
he's
podcast.
On board with us?
He said, what was his words he said? He goes, Robert Pattinson wasn't bad. I liked it. I'm like, really? And I said, it took a big man to call in and admit that.
That's
so I gave
Eric
him kudos
speak
on
for that was a really good movie.
Yeah, so he wound up liking it. Kind of like we were surprised too, really, because we already talked about it.
But we admitted that.
Yeah, but we
also didn't go into it saying it was going to suck without knowing.
No, and I didn't know and I've learned not to do that now because I don't want to have to eat that crow later when I'm wrong, and I'm wrong more and more often. Well, I talked earlier. I reviewed online when you weren't here. I reviewed on the air about Sam Raimi and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I have another story here that I want to talk about from Slash Film. It's about Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire. It's called Here's How Sam Raimi Reacted to Seeing Tobey Maguire Play Peter Parker Again in Spider-Man No Way Home. 20 years ago this week is when Spider-Man opened. 20 years ago this week. Spider-Man is now 20-plus years old. The first Spider-Man.
With Tobey Maguire.
Yeah. The world of superhero cinema has never been the same since it opened. The success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and DC Comics film adaptations all owe a great debt to Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man film. Actually, they maybe owe more of a debt, I understand, to Blade, because Blade was the movie that was successful from Marvel that pulled them out of the red back in the day. It was so successful it helped get them out of bankruptcy, I think. But Spider-Man,
but in terms of
big shot in the arm,
MCU,
too.
I will say this: nobody, I think, knew, unless you were a diehard comic book collector, that Blade was based on a comic book.
Right, not a lot of people
Everyone knew Spider-Man was.
Yeah, that's right. And Sam Raimi proved there was a huge market for these kind of stories with the first Spider-Man film. And to me, it is. If anybody asks me what's my favorite superhero film, I say Superman is. But the first Spider-Man by Sam Raimi is my second favorite of all time. I thought it was a story and an origin story handled wonderfully by a guy that's obviously a fan of it, and that's Sam Raimi. It was the first film to reach $100 million in a single weekend, was Spider-Man by Sam Raimi, and at the time was the most successful film based on a comic book movie ever made. Raimi went on to create 2 sequel films, one, they say, better received than the other, 2 than 3.
Doc Ock was really good.
But with Marvel introducing Iron Man the year following Spider-Man 3, the rest, they say, is history. Now, let's make a distinction. The Spider-Man trilogy by Raimi is not part of the MCU, but it's part of the Marvel Comics films, though.
Are you sure now?
I don't know. Maybe it is now. Because of Spider-Man No Way
it wasn't initially.
Home.
Remember, we used to have to tell people, well, that's Spider-Man's different than the Tom Holland.
Right. Now maybe we don't have to say that anymore.
You don't have to.
We really don't. Raimi notoriously had a rough go of things with the studio heads during Spider-Man 3.
This is sad.
Stepped away from superhero films for 15 years. Now, Raimi is back, as we've been talking about all morning, with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. A return to the cinematic universe he was formative in creating, believe it or not. While this is his first time back in the director's chair, it is no way the first time his impact has showcased in the MCU. Spider-Man No Way Home may have led with Tom Holland's Peter Parker as the star, but thanks to the magic of the multiverse, both Andrew Garfield of the Amazing Spider-Man series and Tobey Maguire from Raimi's original Spider-Man assisted Tom Holland's Peter Parker in an epic battle to save the universe. And you just rewatched it recently, haven't you, Alan? And Raimi was already well into post-production when the film debuted, but seeing his Peter Parker on the screen once again was the perfect welcome wagon to the MCU. During a moving interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Raimi expressed how it felt seeing Tobey Maguire on the big screen as Peter Parker, as Peter 2, as he's called in the movie, in his Spidey suit after all these years. Quote, "It was very emotionally moving," Raimi said. "I probably felt like the audience felt. Oh, there's my old friend, the old hero who I haven't seen in 15 years. He's back," unquote. Now, Raimi had planned for a fourth Spider-Man film with Maguire, and I think they were going to use his college professor as the Lizard at that point, the guy missing the arm. And they did use it eventually in Andrew Garfield's movie. But after the production nightmare for him that was Spider-Man 3, those plans went out the window. Raimi loved working with Maguire and co-star Kirsten Dunst, going on record to say he'd love to revisit that world with them both or even work on a non-superhero project with them. Raimi greatly enjoyed Maguire's performance in Spider-Man No Way Home, saying it looked like he had lived kind of a hard life as Spider-Man as the oldest Peter Parker in the film. Raimi was absolutely right, as we heard Peter talk about all the Peters share their lives in their other universes. The Parker of Peter 2's universe has spent decades keeping the world safe from supervillainy, and that's going to wear any person down, even a superhero. So there you go. Sam Raimi was happy to see Tobey Maguire back in there, and just as that was going on, he had already started pre-production on the Multiverse of Madness at that point, so he knew he was in that creative universe of
What's
of
crazy
Marvel.
is when I read that same article a couple days ago, he wanted to do a fourth Spider-Man, but the studio at that point was meddling too much. Like, look at how great you've created. Now, what if you did this? Now, what? Like, you let the guy create the world that now you're reveling in, and now you're going to tell him how to do it?
Yeah, he's doing fine. He knows it. He's doing fine. Just kind of
Which may
leave him alone.
explain why some of the third movie felt a little clunky.
Right.
It very
It was
well could be
interfered
way
with.
too much interference with producers. And so he said, guess what, guys? I'm done.
Maybe if there had been a Kevin Feige back then, we would have had his Spider-Man 4. That would have been nice. But, things happen for a reason, and it happened the way it did. We did have his trilogy. He did make 3 Spider-Man films. And where I loved Andrew Garfield's appearance in Spider-Man No Way Home, showing up as another Peter, he's a good actor. I like Andrew Garfield.
Can I tell you, he was the best he has been,
but
was in No Way Home?
Right.
As Spider-Man.
And I recently watched his Spider-Man films again not too long ago, and I'm just not a fan of those. There's something about those being I think they were released too close to the Raimi films because I was so ensconced in knowing Tobey Maguire and those guys, and I was a little resentful. I'm like, why are they bringing out these now? What's going on here? And they just weren't as good as the Raimi films. They weren't totally horrible, but they just weren't as good. They were missing something.
They suffer, I think, what the DC and a lot of their movies suffered from. They just worried too much about making the villains too cartoonish.
Right.
While they had a backdrop where people were used to a more realistic Spider-Man from Raimi. I mean, Doc Ock had his arms, but he was a human being, and there was a humanity to the story.
Right.
And you lost that in
when
the
they
other
brought
movies.
in Harry, his friend, who becomes the Green Goblin. We've just seen that already. We're rehashing it already early, and I don't think it was done anywhere near as well. I didn't like the kid playing Harry Osborn in this one. It was just missing something, and I thought it was too much too soon, I guess.
And let's face it, the director can bring a heart to a project, and Sam Raimi, every one of his movies, no matter how low budget, is about the person that you're telling the story around.
Right,
and
it's
you
usually
can't forget that.
Usually entertaining too. It's BK on the Air. We'll be back.
We will return after these messages.
A lot of you moms don't know there's a lot of good inside Kellogg's Pop-Tarts toaster pastries.
There is?
Sure. First of all, there are 6 Pop-Tarts inside.
6? That's good.
And there's real fruit filling inside, plus a tasty pastry crust.
Hey, that's good, Milton.
And 6 vitamins and iron.
Well, now that's very good.
You see, for snacks or as part of a good breakfast, it's good to know there's a lot of good inside Kellogg's Pop-Tarts.
Identify for retina scan.
Explore the far reaches of the universe with the Starship Enterprise and Wendy's. Because right now, with the purchase of a Wendy's Fun Pack meal, you'll receive a free Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan movie poster. Imagine it. You get just the right size Wendy's hamburger, French fries, and soft drink or Frosty, plus this exciting color wall poster free. So beam yourself to Wendy's for a Fun Pack meal that's truly out of this world. But be careful. The Wrath of Khan awaits you.
Hey, we're back. It's BK on the air here on AM 1450 and 100.3 FM WBHF. You know, the year 1982 was 40 years ago. And this year, we're actually going to be able to see The Wrath of Khan in the theater, thanks to Fathom Events from 1982, 40 years ago. And we're going to be able to see Poltergeist in the theater, which I don't think either one of us have ever seen Poltergeist in the theater.
I've never seen it on the big screen.
But let's talk about 1982 just a little bit. It was 40 years ago.
Data 8 presents the world's first rock video game, Journey Escape. The concert's over. Now you must help each member of Journey escape through mobs of love-crazed groupies, shifty-eyed promoters,
I can get you the forest.
and freaky photographers. Find your roadies and manager.
You got 10 minutes.
And run for the escape vehicle and live to rock another day. Journey Escape for the Atari 2600 from Data Age.
From 1982, the Atari Journey video game from 40 years ago. Now, I remember the stand-up cabinet game. The first time I saw it was at Six Flags.
Which was different than the 2600.
Very different. There's no way they could reproduce the graphics on the home thing. But it's interesting to have that level of success and have a video game. And in the cabinet game, their faces were on the characters. They were digitized, but you could tell it was little black and white pictures of Steve Perry and the other group members on the little controllers controlling the thing. You got to be pretty popular to have a whole video game made for you. And Journey was with a super.
That may have been a marketing misstep, but okay, it was.
Yeah, I don't know that it hurt them. I mean, it got more exposure for them. That's for sure. And I remember people lining up to play it at Six Flags when I saw it from the first time. Well, let's talk about 1982. I found an excellent article by Jeremy Smith off avclub.com. How the summer of 1982 changed movies forever, and it really did. Now, 1975, Jaws came out and kind of started the summer movie thing, but 82 was a pivotal year as well. For cinephiles of a certain age, it's impossible to conceive of a world without a summer movie season, kicking off the first weekend of May or occasionally the last weekend of April, depending on what's going on, and closing out somewhere around Labor Day weekend is when it usually stops, the summer movie season. It's a 4-month smorgasbord of blockbusters when Hollywood's dream merchants dazzle us with ambitious visions, state-of-the-art visual effects, and star-studded comedies, along with other things. There's at least one glitzy new release every weekend, and if you're lucky enough to live in a major media center, oodles of critically acclaimed independent films as well. You're not going to see many Oscar contenders during this period, but one way or the other, you will be entertained. This is not always it wasn't always the case. Prior to 1975, movies generally opened any old time they wanted to. Then Jaws shattered just about every box office record, which at point studio executives realized there was serious financial hay to be made when the nation's children were out of school. This inkling was confirmed and then some by Star Wars in 1977. Ditto Animal House in 1978 and Alien in 1979. Suddenly, an industry that spent a decade mashing buttons trying to court the youth market had its cheat code that they could get a hold of.
Ooh, a video game reference.
That's right. The era of motion picture maximism had arrived. Be it sci-fi, fantasy, action, comedy, or drama, the answer was to go big. Blow it out. Leave them not only wanting more, but lining up for the next screening even. After a brief period of recalibration, the summer movie season as we know it now began in 1982. That's the year the studios were throwing haymakers every weekend, offering up mega-budget spectaculars that had to make gobs of money just to break even. For a generation hooked on the escapist yarns of Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, this was the cinematic nirvana. Going to the movies was like hitting up your local comic book store, which, how true that would be in the future, like today in 2022.
Right.
Talk about comic books. People were buying tickets to strange new worlds created by some of the greatest filmmakers on the planet, all of whom were in their prime. Spielberg, John Carpenter, Ridley Scott, John Milius, George Miller. There was a ballsy new comedy from Steve Martin and Carl Reiner that spliced the comic book into black and white classics from the 1940s. I think that was called Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, right?
Yep.
Burt Reynolds and Dolly Parton had a bawdy musical with a naughty title as well. Best little
whorehouse in
Texas. Tron. What the heck was Tron? We had to find out. We didn't know what it was, but we had to find out. What the studios didn't understand 40 years ago was that IP was king. For the most part, they were putting their faith in filmmakers coming off massive hits. Spielberg had recovered from the disaster that was 1941 with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Scott was scorching hot after Alien. John Carpenter and Kurt Russell made the most of a shoestring budget with Escape from New York. That's true. They didn't spend a lot of money on Escape from New York, but it was a fantastic movie.
And we talked about the whole idea of the setting of New York. They just went to a burned-out area outside of St. Louis.
St. Louis, yeah. And we were on that podcast and talked about it.
We didn't even have to build a set.
And if you hadn't told me that, I never would have known it.
No, exactly.
I never would have known it, and that's good filmmaking. Hollywood was, to a certain degree, a director-driven industry. There are no stars in E.T. or Poltergeist. Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered a muscle-bound charisma void when he made Conan the Barbarian, based on Robert E. Howard's popular pulp character. We remember that, 1982. Harrison Ford was a delight as Han Solo in Indiana Jones, but a hard sell as the dour Deckard in Blade Runner. Risks were being taken. Now, not every risk paid off. In retrospect, this was a watershed summer, 1982, with a stunningly favorable hit-to-miss ratio. But audiences were content to miss some of the best movies because they couldn't make sense of the marketing materials. Blade Runner, The Thing, and Tron were actually bombs at the theater. They didn't They were in the red. They didn't make any money. Critics largely hated Carpenter's remake of the 1951 sci-fi classic, The Thing. New York Times reviewer called it a quintessential moron movie, was a quote about that movie.
Totally
I'm
missed
like,
it.
What?
Like, what movie did that person watch?
Audience word of mouth held that it was a ludicrous, gruesome downer which flew in the face of the optimism exemplified by Spielberg's suburban fantasies at the time that he made. Blade Runner was also too downbeat, even if it's over-exploratory voiceover by Harrison Ford, which was corrected in the director's cut later on. Tron just looked weird. With its video game tie-ins, came on like more of a commercial than a movie, they say. Now, it's strange to say now, but the summer's biggest film, E.T., was also its biggest gamble. Spielberg was not yet, at the time, the widely revered filmmaker god that he is today. Even in 1982, they didn't think of him that way. Critics carped that he made popcorn movies that they claimed he valued false momentary sensation over real earthbound emotion. These are critics and people talking about him back in the day. Now, for a country that had just crawled out from under the Vietnam War and everything else that had been going on in the 70s, Spielberg unfettered cheeriness felt unearned. Now he was going back to the alien well with another touchy-feely close encounter. Sooner or later, this act was going to wear thin because, he made Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1977. E.T. the Extraterrestrial opened on June the 11th, 1982, to rapturous reviews and thunderstruck audiences. Few films have ever hit the critic moviegoer bullseye so squarely than E.T. Even Spielberg's most cynical critics were forced to concede that he'd made a kind-hearted movie, and I wouldn't argue that.
No, I do think it didn't age as well as his other movies, but it's still. Right. I remember the impact at the day, and still. You can't deny what it was.
Right. Spielberg said he was already the king of summers thanks to Jaws and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and by the end of E.T.'s first theatrical run, which actually stretched into late 1983, if you think about it, it was the top-grossing film of all time. For a long time, it held the #1 spot. Oscars or no, Spielberg was now the king of Hollywood. Now, the anointing of Spielberg was significant, but the summer's most pivotal development in terms of film business was the continued proliferation of multiplex theaters. And they were. When I first saw the first theater that had more than 2 cinemas in it, that amazed me because I was used to just twin cinemas, number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, you could see 2 films. That's all you could see. I went to a theater once that had 22 screens.
I've never been to one that big.
That's
I can tell
really
you
big.
That's crazy.
I don't think they could do that now because they're scaling back.
Well, I told you the first movie I ever saw by myself with my brother was a theater that was built inside of a shopping mall, so you could be safe. You came in through the mall.
Right.
My mom could drop us off, and it was an 8-house theater. And they're like, "Oh my God, that's just overkill! 8 theaters." There's never that many movies to watch.
Who's going to see that many? And now
that's kind of standard.
And for the long time, there was only one screen in a drive-in. Now there's drive-ins that have 2 and 3 big giant screens to park in front of, and that's crazy too. Drive-ins kind of they were huge but then they went away and almost died, and then they made a quasi comeback. So now they exist now out of nostalgia more than anything else, which is great. We've even got wind of a possible drive-in being built here in Cartersville soon. That's going to be great. So there's a little more of this article that's very poignant. I'll cover the rest of it when we come back after the break. It's too important and too well written to not give it justice as we go on with the program. It's BK on there. Stay tuned. We'll have more of this article from the AV Club when we come back.
Simon sets the pace. You follow right along. Light the lights that Simon lights, or he'll tell you that you're wrong. Simon's a computer. Simon has a brain. You either do what Simon says, or else go down the drain. Simon is a master. He tells you what to do, but you can master Simon if you follow every clue. And if you think Simon's fun at the party, wait till you play it alone.
Simon with 5 ways to play from MB Electronics.
What do kids say when they're hungry at noon? Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. What do kids say when they pick up a spoon? Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. What do kids say when they want to eat soon? Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. Serve Franco-American SpaghettiOs with meatballs or sliced franks. The neat brown spaghetti you can eat with a spoon. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs.
This is William Shatner, and I would like to invite you to take a journey with me into the 21st century. So take the next few minutes and listen very closely. You'll be amazed at what you hear.
Yeah, I love it every Saturday. I get to come in here and talk about what I want, what I'm passionate about. Just have fun after a week of life and putting up with things. And I come in here for escape valve, pressure valve, release valve. It is this show. Before we went to a break, I was talking about this excellent article written from avclub.com talking about the importance of the 1982 movie season. Let's get back to it. We're talking about chains of movies, theaters, how big they were. Chains like the National Amusement and AMC movie theaters were erecting massive complexes all over the country, it says, which allowed studios to front-load openings on 1,000-plus screens in 1982 rather than roll their hits out more slowly over several months. Paramount Pictures took advantage of it, as we remember, with the newfangled opportunity by launching Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan on 1,621 screens over the weekend of June 4th, 1982. They were rewarded with a record-breaking $14 million three-day gross, more than twice the opening of films like Poltergeist in 1982. Other studios didn't immediately change their release strategies, but in the early 90s, it was customary for tentpole titles to go as wide as possible in their opening frames. To give the example here of 1983's Return of the Jedi, it debuted on only 1,002 screens when it came out in 1983. They still didn't feel, I guess, confident to do that even after the 1982 blockbuster movie studio theater boom of the summer. Now, it says here, 40 years later, the nation's cinema have become amusement parks, delivery systems for cutting-edge CG showcases, and occasional cheap horror movie thrill. Want proof? Just ask the guy we talked about earlier, Steven Spielberg. In 2021, his wildly celebrated $100 million remake of West Side Story bombed at the box office with a $38 million domestic take. That's a big bomb. That really is. While the latest Spider-Man movie in December from the MCU became the third highest grossing movie in film history. There were competing factors, namely December's Omicron surge variant, scaring off moviegoers who would have been a key target for West Side Story. Now, I left that in there because the guy wrote that in the article. We don't necessarily agree with that.
That he was helping to give Spielberg, for whatever reason, an excuse, and it's not. No,
he was. But the hard truth is that and this is also factors in too, I think, young viewers simply didn't care to buy a ticket for a film based on a 64-year-old musical production, absent superheroes, dinosaurs, or dazzling action set pieces. Or I'll throw in there based on a video game or something like that as well. Because they know the formula for a blockbuster now. They really do. Now, aside from rare exceptions like Jackass Forever, they don't buy tickets to straight-up comedies anymore either. That's true as well. Jackass has a built-in audience, though, I think, which is interesting. Now, these go straight to streaming, it says. Ditto to the dramas. It's all sensation, the article says, all the time on the big screen now, thanks to or because of the lessons from 1982. Much of the film industry now exists as an endless summer haze, a year-round business that's always awaiting that next blockbuster jolt at the multiplex. Now, I'll halfway agree with that statement, because when it comes to producers and filmmakers and film companies that own these properties, that is what it's about. Because what do they want to do? They want to make money and be successful. That's exactly what they want to do.
Well, that was the whole idea of the concept of the tent pole.
Right.
If you tell a really massive story that makes a lot of money, then you've got leftovers to do the independent and smaller movies. But if your studio goes bankrupt, then sorry if you think that the comic book movies are worthless. They're helping fund all the arty movies that you might like.
Well, I'm getting a little tired of hearing about prestigious filmmakers like Francis Ford Coppola and name and some of the actors that are going, well, these superhero films, they're beneath us. We don't really. It's not really cinema. I'm like, last time I checked, they were shown in the cinema, and there were films, and they were directed by a director, and they used equipment.
No, these are not
actors.
These aren't movies.
And what are they then? They're not cinema films. They have a story to tell. They're entertaining. Last time I checked, my personal identification and meaning of cinema and theater, that was it. I thought it.
Well,
if
you haven't learned anything, it's words are fluid today.
Well, I also think true. Some of those things, though, has something to do with maybe those directors weren't asked to direct one, and they're mad.
There could be a little
jealous.
bit of that green-eyed monster of jealousy in there.
I could direct one of those movies. Won't they let me?
Or maybe they asked and they were told no, thank you. Like, well, you don't make good movies anyway. I don't want to make your stupid movie.
Wait a minute. Are you saying they're childish, like in a playground?
Could very well be.
I think it could be. Yeah,
could be.
I remember saying things like that when I was a kid. Only it was about like the sandbox.
Look.
And
I've said this before.
Equipment.
On YouTube, I watch some of the reaction videos, people who are watching movies for the very first time that are younger, that have no perspective. They didn't collect the comics.
Those are cool when they're real, not when they're fake. Some of them are totally fake.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can. And the one that I watch the most, she is like, every time you guys keep telling me the next movie in the MCU is going to be even better than the last, she goes, there's no way. And she goes, and these movies are great.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what Francis Ford Coppola's issue is. When you tell an engaging story with a lot of fun, has some action, but has some heart and has something you learn about yourself, that's a good movie.
Yeah, and when it's entertainment, meaning as if it's just over the top, fun, escape. You got to throw the word escapism in there as well, because when I go to the movie, I want to be transported out of my reality usually, unless I'm watching a documentary or something based on fact. That's different. But when I see a superhero film go to another planet or fight in a realm that's in another completely multiverse or something, I do want to be taken away and entertained.
Yeah,
and these do.
And as we know, there have been plenty of examples where all the razzle dazzle doesn't make for a good movie. There's more to it than just a lot of CGI.
Well, why would Francis Ford Coppola say something like that if he indeed was one of the directors? He remade Dracula. That's a horror fantasy character.
By the way, his version of Dracula I really didn't like.
It was terrible. It was one of the worst I've ever seen.
Nice moments, but it was more fun to mock it in other movies like Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Right. And when people say that to me, they're like, well, I saw it, but it had great moments. I'm like, oh, I don't go to movies just watch parts.
Right.
I go to movies usually watch the whole thing. So yeah.
Yeah, generally you're supposed to take it as a whole.
You didn't hear earlier because you weren't here. Yeah, you weren't here. I said that we love movies. We love the craft of making movies. We recognize directors' works. There are directors that you and I, not being told who directed the film, we can say, oh, I know who directed this.
Or we could say
that.
It's very much like, because there's other people who will imitate because they've
With me, it was Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi was one of them. Spielberg kind of one of them to a certain point. Now, it's hard for me to tell with his new films. Also, Stanley Kubrick was one. I thought, oh, this looks like a Stanley Kubrick film. He obviously directed this. And the Coen brothers are slowly becoming that way. I'm like, oh, this looks like, because the Coen brothers were very heavily influenced, I think, by Steven Spielberg. They really were. The weird, anxiety-ridden scenes where you're like, oh, this just feels uneasy or something. There are ones we identify.
The one thing you can almost find in every one of the more, let's say, pop or commercial Spielberg films, at some point, you will have a group of actors, sometimes extras, all staged where it looks like they're all a crowd, but they're all individually seen.
Right.
And the camera does a push in, pull out. So, woo, there you go. And you're like, oh, okay, that's a Spielberg moment.
he'll also, for a long time, I don't know if he still uses it as much anymore, but for a long time he used what was called the Spielberg close-up, where he just he doesn't zoom in the camera, he pushes the entire camera into the actor's face when something's going on.
And it's very similar to the crowd pose. A lot of times he'll mix the two. The crowd pose as the camera pushes into the main character.
Every now and then he'd throw a shooting star into his films. I mean, he'd since lost that, I think, but that was kind of a thing going thing with him. Well, we're clicking toward the end of the program here. I do want to say Happy Mother's Day to everyone. It is Mother's Day this week. With Mom, it's Mother's Day weekend for the whole weekend. It's not just one day, because you can't always see your mom on Sunday on the day
house,
of.
Mother's Day is every day.
Oh, that's right. Or else.
It is.
Or else. Well, it's a holiday to honor the mothers and celebrated in countries throughout the world. It's a modern form of the holiday originated in the United States, where it's observed on the second Sunday in May. Many other countries also celebrate the holiday on this date, while some mark the observance at other times of the year. During the Middle Ages, the custom developed of allowing those who had moved away to visit their home parishes and their mothers on the fourth Sunday of Lent is when it was. This became Mothering Sunday in Britain, where it continued into modern times, although it's largely been replaced by Mother's Day. Now, some spending on Mother's Day. I think I got time to do this. Mother's Day spending is expecting to total $31.7 billion this year. That's up $3.6 billion from 2021. Maybe it had something to do with COVID. I don't know. According to the annual consumer survey released today by the National Retail Federation and Prosper Insights and Analytics, approximately 84% of the U.S. adults are expected to celebrate Mother's Day. I'm part of that 84%. Consumers are expected to spend $25 more this year on Mother's Day purchases and expect to spend a record average. This is the average people are spending on their mother this year. You ready? $245.76. I'm a bad son because I don't think I hit the average on that for Mom or Mother's Day. I do things better during Christmas and birthdays, but it's like,
does it count if you measure the amount you're spending for the mother of your children?
Well, I don't know, or adjusted for inflation from 1977. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. Jewelry purchases and special outings such as dinner or brunch are driving this year's spending increases. That's kind of what I do anyway, marking a record in the survey's history for average spending in both categories. So, hey, that's from the editors in the Encyclopedia Britannica. So that's where I got those facts and figures. So that's interesting.
They still have an Encyclopedia Britannica?
Yeah, I guess it's all online now.
Wow.
You can still have an online encyclopedia, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Wikipedia
I didn't have that one. I didn't have that one growing up as a kid. I also did not have there was one called World Book. Remember that? Encyclopedia. We had one, and you may remember this name. We had the Funk and Wagnalls Encyclopedia. I think because it was cheaper and the books were smaller. They weren't the bigger hardback books.
But I giggled every time I was a kid at the names of the Funk and Wagnalls.
Well, there's a dated joke in Buck Rogers now, one of the Buck Rogers episodes from 1979. And this guy, he's flying with someone in the Starfighters spaceships.
Recon 1, I appreciate your concern, but I'd appreciate it all the more if next time you'd refrain from interfering in a directorate training mission.
What? If you call that interfering, there's something wrong with your fucking Wagnalls.
Dated joke, but it goes by so fast where it sounds like he says something else.
I think they used to go door to door, and that may be part of it, too.
They probably did.
Avon calling, Funk and Wagnalls.
Get the Funk and Wagnalls off my doorstep.
Exactly.
It's BK on there. We'll see you next week, everybody. Nostalgic Geekness.
Someone isn't going to like that.